Vienna builds 220,000 affordable apartments, while most cities argue about zoning regulations. This Austrian capital proves public housing doesn't mean drab concrete blocks from the 1970s. The city owns 220,000 social housing units that house 500,000 residents. These aren't slums. They're mixed-income communities with courtyards, playgrounds, and ground-floor shops. 62% of Vienna's population qualifies for social housing. Because eligibility extends up to 60,900 euros annual income, that's not poverty housing. That's actual middle-class policy. The average Viennese household spends 21% of income on housing and transportation combined. New Yorkers spend 50% just on rent. Vienna's public transit costs 365 euros annually for unlimited access. That's $1 per day. The city reinvests property tax revenue into more affordable housing instead of highway expansions. Developer fees fund public space improvements. The result? Housing prices stayed stable while Paris and London doubled. Young people can actually afford to live where they work. A revolutionary concept? Vancouver banned apartment construction for 70 years, then wondered why housing cost $1 million. The city finally legalized the missing middle in 2022, after decades of single-family zoning severely restricted supply. The city with the worst housing affordability in North America protected mansion neighborhoods while workers commuted 2 hours daily. The new multiplex policy permits up to 8 units on former single-family lots. Developers can build townhouses, small apartments, and courtyard housing without rezoning battles. Early results show 6,000 new homes approved in the first year. That's more than the previous decade combined. But Vancouver got one thing incredibly right before the zoning failures. The SkyTrain automated metro system moves 500,000 daily riders without drivers. Fully automated trains run every 2 minutes during rush hour. The system expanded to 80 kilometers with 53 stations covering the entire metro area. Property values within 800 meters of stations increased 20% more than distant neighborhoods. Transit-oriented development placed 250,000 residents near rapid transit. The city paired this infrastructure with aggressive bike lane construction. Protected cycling routes increased ridership 400% in a decade. Now 12% of commuters bike year-round despite rain and hills. Barcelona invented the superblock, then the entire world copied the homework. The city takes 9 regular blocks and bans through traffic from the interior streets. Cars can only access the perimeter roads at crawling speeds. The interior becomes pedestrian paradise with playgrounds, cafe seating, and actual trees. The pilot project in Poblenou reduced traffic noise by 82%. Air quality improved so dramatically that asthma rates dropped 24% among young residents living inside superblocks. Local businesses initially protested the car restrictions. Then foot traffic increased 30%, and revenue followed. Turns out people spend more money when they're not dodging SUVs. The city plans to implement 500 superblocks across the entire urban area by 2030. Each transformation costs 5 million euros, but generates 15 million euros in health and economic benefits within 5 years. The superblock model works because it doesn't require demolition or massive construction. Cities just restrict through traffic and paint new crosswalks. Barcelona also built 180 kilometers of bike lanes that actually connect to destinations, protected cycle tracks run beside major boulevards instead of dumping cyclists into traffic. The result? Bike trips increased 300% since 2005. Car ownership dropped to 0.5 per household in the city center. Hamburg demolished an urban highway and became more livable by accident. The city tore down the Altener Balkan elevated highway in 2003 because concrete was literally crumbling. Instead of rebuilding bigger, Hamburg created a 3-kilometer linear park connecting 5 neighborhoods. Property values along the former highway corridor increased 40% within 3 years. The elevated structure had divided communities for 50 years. Removing it reunited street grids and sparked 800 million euros in private development without tax incentives. Hamburg's Hafen City project transformed 388 acres of abandoned docklands into mixed-use neighborhoods. But instead of luxury-only gentrification, Hamburg mandated 30% affordable housing in every building. The city also raised ground floors 3 meters above sea level for flood protection. Climate adaptation built into the infrastructure from day one. Hafen City generates 2 billion euros annually in economic activity while remaining accessible to middle-income residents. The Elbphilharmonie Concert Hall cost 866 million euros and became Hamburg's most recognizable landmark. Hamburg's transit system moves 1.2 million daily riders through integrated buses, trains, and ferries. A single ticket works across all modes. Toronto built a path underground city because walking outside in February is brutal. The system connects 30 kilometers of climate-controlled tunnels linking office towers, shops, and subway stations. Over 200,000 workers use path daily to avoid Canadian winter. The underground network houses 1,200 businesses generating $2 billion in annual retail sales. The result is accidentally brilliant car-free urbanism. No traffic lights, no exhaust fumes, just pedestrians buying coffee underground. Toronto also invested $5.3 billion expanding the subway and light rail network. The Eglinton Crosstown LRT adds 19 kilometers of rapid transit serving 300,000 daily riders. Construction took what felt like ages, but the infrastructure finally arrived. The city's bike share system expanded to 9,000 bikes at 700 stations, covering 140 square kilometers. Toronto proves North American cities can build transit infrastructure even if it requires geological timescales. The downtown core houses 240,000 residents, with 70% using transit, walking, or cycling for commutes. Car ownership in the urban center dropped to 0.6 per household. Condo towers near transit stations sell faster than suburban sprawl. Geneva makes public transit free for minors and caps annual passes at 500 Swiss francs. The city's tram network expanded to 40 kilometers with articulated vehicles running every 5 minutes during peak hours. 80% of Geneva residents live within 300 meters of a transit stop. The city achieved this coverage by building a dense network instead of one expensive metro line. Geneva spent €900 million on tram infrastructure that moves 230,000 daily riders. The city also renovated 12,000 social housing units to passive house energy standards. Geneva's housing cooperative system provides 20,000 affordable units owned collectively by residents. These cooperatives operate at cost without profit extraction. Families pay 25% of income for housing regardless of market fluctuations. What some might call radical policy, Geneva calls it basic math. The city maintains 310 hectares of urban parks, providing green space within 10-minute walks. The Promenade des Bastions hosts chess games and public gatherings without requiring permits. Public space actually belongs to the public. Frankfurt, which had demolished its downtown for banking towers, later rebuilt the medieval old town. The city reconstructed 35 half-timbered houses, using historical photographs after decades of modernist concrete. The €200 million Dom Romer Quarter project reopened in 2018, proving cities can fix their mistakes. Frankfurt's real genius shows in transit infrastructure. The city operates Europe's busiest railway station, moving 450,000 passengers daily. High-speed trains connect Frankfurt to Paris in 4 hours and Berlin in 4 hours. The S-Bahn suburban rail system carries 370,000 daily commuters across the metro region. Frankfurt added 120 kilometers of protected bike lanes since 2010. Cycling mode share increased from 9% to 18% in a decade. The city provides 12,000 bike parking spaces at the central station. Frankfurt's social housing policy requires 30% affordable units in all new developments over 50 homes. The city owns 36,000 social housing apartments, maintaining long-term affordability. Frankfurt proves financial capitals can prioritize people over profit maximization. Edinburgh preserved its entire medieval old town, while other cities demolished history for parking lots. The city designated 4,500 buildings as protected monuments, preventing demolition or inappropriate modifications. UNESCO named Edinburgh's Old and New Towns a World Heritage Site in 1995. The result? Edinburgh's historic centre attracts 4.5 million tourists, annually generating £1.3 billion in economic activity. Edinburgh's tramway project cost £1 billion and took a decade to complete 14 kilometers. The construction disrupted businesses and became a political debacle, but the finished tram carries 8 million passengers annually and sparked £4 billion in development along the corridor. The pain was worth the gain, even if citizens were in an uproar during construction. Edinburgh's 20-minute neighborhood strategy places essential services within walking distance for 90% of residents. The city identified gaps in local amenities and prioritized infill development over sprawl. Edinburgh's public realm improvements spent £60 million pedestrianizing streets and creating pocket parks. Removing cars from Princes Street increased foot traffic 40% and retail revenue 15%. Cities that prioritize people over vehicles become more economically productive. Like this video if your city learned from these successes. Subscribe, because cities can actually be great when we stop building for cars.